Fellas, it's the final week of the regular season, but there's still a lot out there for the taking. Let's discuss how to win in week 18. And we can start by looking at the $5,600 Tyler Algier. The rookie is 100 yards away from a 1,000-yard season, and Atlanta says they're aware of this. And here's his usage as of late. Week 16, 62% of the snaps. That's great. His second highest on the year. This past week, 70% of the snaps, the most he's seen, and 20-plus touches in back-to-back games. And now he's a 4.5-point favorite at just 5,600. Strong play. Now, Algier's probably going to pick up some ownership, but a wide receiver that's not picking up a ton of ownership is a great leverage play is $6,200 Chris Olave, who needs 155 yards to break the Saints rookie record. And I agree that sounds like a lot, but in week 3 in the same exact matchup against the Carolina Panthers, he did drop 147 yards, so he has it in him. And the Panthers last week gave up over 430 yards to Tom Brady, 200 plus yards to Mike Evans. Olave is great leverage at this price tag. Now, another wide receiver who's great leverage at this price tag was injured last week, and that would be Tyler Lockett, who's 6,400 and actually played in the game, but as you see here, he only played 31% of the snaps, as opposed to playing 90% in his previous healthy games. This was because he was injured, but now they're in a must-win situation with a chance to make the playoffs, and he said to reporters he's going to be out there at low ownership. I like him. And I also like his quarterback, a nice little stacking option as well. Geno Smith, $6,000 flat, solid team total, not a lot of high-scoring games this week, but Seattle 24-point team total is a good one. And Geno takes on the Rams secondary that has nothing to play for, and he has a season best this year, career best, 367 yards and 3 touchdowns against them earlier this season. I think he's one of the better stacks, not the best stack, we'll get to that in a second, but one of the better stacks on the week. And I'm not totally against stacking him with his running back Kenneth Walker, who's not known for catching passes, but Walker's 64 yards away from hitting 1,000. He has 28 and 22 touches in the past 2 games. And here's the reason why I'm not completely against stacking him. If the game's going positive, odds are Walker's being used a good amount still. And if it's in a negative game script, the last time we saw that a couple weeks back, he had 5 targets. He ran a lot of routes. He caught 4 balls for 32 yards. They kept him on the field a little bit more rather than taking him off. And this week, the Seahawks are 6-point favorites. In similar situations this year, he's averaging 14.6 points and 17 total touches with his receptions and rush attempts as a favorite. Now, I still prefer Geno with his wide receivers, so the place that I like Walker the most is his prop over 74.5 rushing yards. Take this on prizepicks.com. Okay, now we're gonna have to make a decision this week up top at the expensive spots. Let's talk about that. There's Christian McCaffrey, who's the most expensive running back, 9,300. He has the highest team total, 27.25 points. He's a 14-point favorite. All of this lines up fantastic. In similar situations, he averages 24 DraftKings points. Yeah, I like him a lot. In a game where they can try and get the 1 seed or hold on to the 2 seed, it means something. So McCaffrey's a guy I really like, but you have to choose between him this week and expensive wide receiver Justin Jefferson. And unlike last week, Jefferson's actually cheaper than McCaffrey this week. He's also playing for something. He can take McCaffrey's 2 seed away from him, potentially even the 1 seed if things get wonky this week. But not only that, he's playing for a record, 194 yards to set the NFL record in receiving yards. That sounds like a lot, but he had 154 earlier this year versus Chicago, who he plays this week. And in total, 4 times this year, he's topped 150 yards, including a 193-yard game and a 220-plus yard game. Now, from a DFS standpoint, I'm just going to take Christian McCaffrey if I'm choosing one, but Justin Jefferson over 90.5 receiving yards. I've taken this basically everywhere this week. Take it on Prize Picks, link down below, and you'll get a free bet up to $100 when you use that link. So these are players I like, but now let's start to talk about some guys I'm not really into. And I'm a big Amari Cooper fan on this season. He's a top 10 wide receiver for fantasy. We liked him in like the 5th, 6th round of drafts this season long, but now he's $6,000 and the ownership is picking up. And it makes sense because he continues to produce. Look, 28.5 points last week, was a top 5 receiver, goes over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he does it on just 4 targets. This team doesn't want to throw the ball. They want to run the ball, which is more on that later. And Amari is now picking up a lot of ownership at the wide receiver position. Heck, you probably like him. I'm staying away for those reasons. And if we go back to the expensive running backs, Austin Eckler is there at $8,900. He needs 14 receptions to break Christian McCaffrey's record for a single season. But there's rumors that Justin Herbert might not play. Their team total is only 18.5 points, so that kind of suggests that. By the time you're watching this, that news might already be out. Heck, maybe even Eckler's not playing, so that makes it really easy. But I don't like Eckler because he's picking up a lot of ownership with a little bit more risk than McCaffrey. All right, let's talk tight end. Dallas Goedert, he's $4,900. He has the highest team total on the slate. He continues to have an elite role, running 92% of the routes last week. Might get his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, back this week, and he faces the Giants, who give up the 7th most tight end catches. I think Dallas Goedert's a really nice play, coming in with modest ownership, maybe even too low of ownership. And I also like his quarterback, $8,200 Jalen Hurts, who's been taking first team reps in practice this week. All reports and indications are that he's going to play. And I mean, the matchup is fantastic against the Giants. Their secondary ranks 28th overall. Hurts has the highest team total at 28.5 points, and he's already dropped 30 plus points in week 14 against this Giants team. I think Jalen Hurts is arguably, if not the best, I would say he is, stacking option in quarterback this week as they try and lock up the the 1 seed. And yes, you can stack Dallas Goedert with him as a cheaper option. That's great. And also, $8,000 AJ Brown finally got to the $8,000 range is also great. He's 9 yards away from being the Eagles' most receiving yards in a season in just his first year there, but he's 99 yards away from 1,500 yards, which is a number he's already indicated is important to him. Last time out against the Giants, he put up 4 catches, 70 yards, but it was kind of a bad weather game. Now, I'm on AJ Brown in DFS. He's lower owned because of the price tag this week, but I also like his over 73.5 receiving yards. Again, 99 yards to hit 1,500 and a really good matchup, and he wants to get there. He's really good friends with Jalen Hurts. I think they make this happen. So those are a lot of expensive guys. For some cheaper options now, we go to the mid-range. $5,800 Garrett Wilson against a poor Miami secondary is great. Look, last week, Mike White clearly wasn't healthy, and he's probably not going to be healthy this week, but he says he's feeling better. He's getting more practice reps in, and that's good news for Garrett Wilson, who saw 11 targets last week. And if we look at his volume overall, he has 7+ targets. These are his targets right here. 7+ if we scroll through this, and 8 out of his last 9 games. Again, this dude is a rookie. At $5,800 for this type of volume and his skill set, what his upside is, yeah, this is a great play. And a guy even cheaper than him, a wide receiver 1 for his team, is $5,100 Jacoby Myers, who's actually playing for something this week, trying to get into the playoffs. And Myers is just forever unloved in fantasy. Since he's gotten back to his full-time role from injury, 100% of the snaps, 85% of the snaps. What has that led to? Well, 7 targets, 9 targets, 6 catches in back-to-back games. More importantly, for our purposes, fantasy, 20+ points, 16.8 points, yet he's still that cheap. And not only that cheap, but that low owned, I like Jacoby Myers. Now, if you want to go to the absolute bottom, some people are going all the way down to $3,000 flat Steven Sims, who I'm just not getting there. I know he had a couple of catches last time in prime time for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but at the end of the day, he's the 4th pass catching option for Kenny Pickett. That doesn't sound all that great in what's supposed to be a low scoring game. I'm not there. He's picking up like 5% ownership. Just go anywhere else. And quite frankly, similar things can be said for Greg Dortch. He's in a brutal matchup against San Francisco. I know they gave it up to Jared Stidham last year, but that was just a 1-week thing. $3,800 Greg Dortch has been good. He's had 10 and 11 targets in back-to-back games, but now he's picking up 10+% ownership as of this recording in the DFS blueprint, link down below. I'm just not going to get there. Guys I'd rather go to who are basically picking up no ownership around him: Isaiah McKenzie, who's working for incentives this week to try and make more money in his contract; Chris Moore, who's $4,000 flat, not picking up any ownership. I'd rather go to those guys. Or you can just change up the position and go to a $3,800 exact same price Pat Freiermuth, who's not picking up all that much ownership, and he continues to rock and roll. And what I mean by that, he just continues to play an elite role. 90% of the routes run, 83% of the routes run since he's gotten back his full health. This has led to 14 targets over the last 2 games. Now is a nice matchup against the Browns this week. I'm going to be putting a yes by Pat Freiermuth. And I also have interest in $6,600 Alvin Kamara, because they're not playing for anything, but there's no rookie behind him. It's not like there's somebody else back there that they can say, hey, let's try and see what we have in this guy, take some load off of Kamara. No, not at all. Kamara's role remains elite, as you see this. 98% of the snaps, 77% of the snaps the last few games, 17 touches just a week ago. And now he has fair ownership in the DFS blueprint, nothing crazy, as a 3-point favorite, continue to see somewhere around 20 touches. Now, a player that I'm not all that interested in is James Cook, and I like the player overall. We've been talking him up in season long. Definitely going to be a great, potentially even league winner next year if nobody goes there. $5,000 flat, nice team total. He's solid. The problem is he's picking up 10% ownership. I'd rather go to this guy. At $5,200, you get Zach Moss, and Zach Moss has been great, and now he gets the dream matchup. He's going to face the Houston Texans, who right now the Texans rank 30th in run defense, and Moss the last 2 games is averaging 5.2 yards per touch, top 10 in the NFL. To me, he's a quality leverage play. He should probably be in about 10 to 12% of the lineups this week. He'll probably be in like 4% of them. And if you want to see exactly who the best leverage plays are, where the ownership is coming from, the point projections, and a whole lot more, you can check out the DFS blueprint link down below on Patreon and join the thousands of other people currently using it to win more and lose less in sports betting and DFS, not just in NFL, but other sports as well. So if that sounds appealing to you, you can join the countless others getting access right now with the link in the description below to the DFS blueprint. Now, another running back that I'm a little bit hesitant on is $6,200 Cam Akers. I'd rather go to Kenneth Walker, who's just not picking up a lot of ownership. I get it. Cam Akers has been solid lately, but he's a 7-point underdog this week. The receiving ability hasn't been there all that much. The burst hasn't been there all that much. A bad team total, and he's picking up a good amount of ownership. And to me, it's a fade. If there was a punk to take a shot on from his team, to me, I think that you could at least look at Tutu Atwell. He's played 80+% of the snaps now in 5 straight games. He's out there getting scheme production. I get it. He's not producing all that much, but he's seeing targets. He's seeing carries. All you need from him here is 12 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points at 3,400. I'd rather pivot off of a guy like Steven Sims for Tutu Atwell, who's actually a top 2, top 3 wide receiver in his offense when Steven Sims is not. Not to mention the ownership difference is completely off on those guys. Atwell 1% owns Steven Sims 5%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is at the end of the day. Another guy I don't think is worth the squeeze is $3,300 Trey McBride, because he has high ownership and a tougher matchup. I get it. He had a career day last week for a rookie tight end, but he hasn't been consistent all year. We can't rely on his career day to be the new normal, even if there is a newer quarterback there. I'm not expecting 10 targets. 13-point team total. This is an avoid for me for a guy who's picking up around 5% ownership. I think you can go elsewhere. Now, that elsewhere is probably just to more expensive plays. If you didn't want to go to more expensive, Daniel Bellinger and Hunter Renfrow are here, but I do think that we still have some cheap options and relatively cheap options given the upside of these plays. Like, yeah, $5,700 for TJ Hawkinson, but I'm a big TJ Hawkinson fan this week. Hawkinson just had 12 targets last week. He now has 28 targets over his last 2 games and 6+ targets. If we look back at this, scroll right here, his targets, 6+ targets in 9 straight games, every single game as a Viking. That is tight end gold. Now, he is picking up some ownership, so you have to be careful here, but one way to mitigate that is by putting him in a stack with his quarterback Kirk Cousins, who's 6,500. And for this price tag of 6,500, having a 25.5 point team total, the second highest on the slate, Cousins, in my opinion, is significantly underpriced. He's still playing for something here, and in similar spots as a favorite with a 25.5 point team total, Cousins averages 22.5 points and 293 passing yards. And now he gets a bad Bears secondary, 25th in the NFL, that he put up 23.2 points earlier this year on. Some other options at quarterback that I do have exposure to right now, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. All right, now I at least want to mention this next running back, and it's for all you diehards out there, because if you stayed till this late in the program and didn't cut out yet, you're gonna have a little bit of a little tea for you. There is something to Nick Chubb at $7,500 this week. This dude, Nick Chubb, is gonna be about 1% owned, and all I'm gonna say in a divisional matchup where they look like they want to run a lot, Nick Chubb is gonna see 18+ touches. That's all I'm gonna say here. 18+ touches for Nick Chubb at $7,500 for a guy who's normally been an upper $7,000 to $8,000 running back this year. He is one of the best leverage plays on the slate this week. Not going to get any ownership, should get significant ownership for a guy who has absolute upside and is now taking the lead and all of the touches away from Kareem Hunt in that backfield. And a very simple option for you to get exposure to him is to go down to a cheaper Deontay Johnson at $5,200 and skinny stack it, getting these guys from the same game without having to play their terrible quarterbacks, or at least their bad quarterbacks as of late. Sorry, Deshaun Watson. Deontay Johnson, $5,200, one catch away from setting a record for most receptions without a touchdown. Now that's crazy. And surely I hope he scores that touchdown this week so it doesn't happen, especially if we're trying to build this nice little skinny stack here. But the volume remains high as it always has this year for Deontay. 7+ targets here is his targets in 6 straight games. We can keep scrolling to his 11, his 8. He has been absolutely fantastic at $5,200. I like this skinny stack. And another spot that I actually like this week is going to be George Kittle. These are kind of the tight end range that I'm in. I do think that Mark Andrews is in play as well, but these upper tight ends are really where I want to go. I think Cole Kmet is now priced up. I think Dalton Schultz is fine. Tyler Higbee's fine. Dawson Knox is fine, mainly in stacks, but I think George Kittle, who's not picking up a ton of ownership compared to the rest, he's just kind of up there with the rest of these highly priced guys. I think he's a strong play because in 8 games with Brock Purdy, 16.8 points, 6.3 targets. Now that's been heavily on touchdowns, but the last 2 games, 8 targets in each of them. Matchup against the Cardinals to give up the second most points to tight ends. I like it. Now there's what you need to know for this week, and obviously track the news as this is being recorded on Friday morning. Things can change, of course, and we'll be live on Sunday to talk about what changes, as well as going deep in depth on my exposures on the best strategies, on the best correlating pieces on Sunday morning's GPP, How to Win a GPP podcast in the DFS Blueprint on Patreon. Again, want to join the countless others who have access and start winning more? Click the link in the description below to join now.